And then you have, I just want to give you one example, Pelosi's number 2 in the House. Let's take a look at what Steny Hoyer had to say.
To get to a deal. What's interesting here is you've got Steve Mnuchin, you've got Mark Meadows saying it's you that are being intransigent in this. It's them that have come up on some issues. I don't want to go into the nitty gritty, but are you letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, as I often have to ask when it comes to negotiations in Congress?
No, we're letting the absolutely essential be the goal. Not the good, not the great, not the best, the absolutely essential. In terms of confronting the virus, in terms of having state and local governments have the resources to help respond to the virus and prop up the economy, and to individuals, not only with respect to unemployment insurance, but to those personal payments that we're making, corporations who are going to lay people off, that we need to help keep those people employed. No. It's not the perfect that's the enemy. It is the essential. And very frankly, if this administration had acted in the last 2.5 months and come up with an alternative, we would have reached an agreement before we left in July for these negotiations.
Do you think it's Friday or bust, as Mnuchin seemed to lay out? If you don't agree on major issues on Friday, there's going to be no deal?
I don't know what he means by Friday or bust. Let's say we don't make...
That's my take on it, but yeah.
Well, but I totally reject that, and I hope Mnuchin reflects upon that. There is no walking away from the American people. There's no walking away from these folks who are confronting a crisis and their families are confronting a crisis. If we don't get the deal Friday, we need to get it Saturday. We need to get it done as soon as we possibly can. And I hope that means Friday. I hope it means Saturday. And I will call them.
Oh, I'm sorry, Majority Leader. The threat from the president that you noted, that he says that he could take executive action if you don't come to a deal. Is that a threat you take seriously?
Well, it's hard to take anything the president says seriously because he's all over the ballpark every day. One minute he says this, and the next minute he says the opposite. So, whether or not he has the power to do that, I just heard that statement, so I don't know what he has in mind. But we ought not to have to rely on an executive order that may be questionable, because that will leave so many people in deep, deep distress and in danger, because you'll only be able to deal with one part of the problem. Are we prepared to make a deal on the money? We're not going to get $3.4 trillion. We understand that. But the fact of the matter is...
You know what? Just for fun, let me just remind you who this is, Steny Hoyer. Do you remember The Intercept broke this a couple years ago when Steny Hoyer basically was caught on hot tape trying to force a progressive candidate out of a race in Colorado?
You would like me to get out of the race.
You keep saying I would like you to get out. And of course that's correct.
Yeah. I know you're fundraising for Crow.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm for Crow. I am for Crow because a judgment was made very early on. I didn't participate in the decision.
So your position is a decision was made, very early on before voters had to say, that's fine because that's the DCCC knows better than the voters of the 6th congressional district, and we should line up behind that candidate.
That's certainly the consequence of our decision. There are two things I'd like you to consider. One may be easier than the other. The first would be if you stay in the race. And frankly, I would hope you would not. I'll get to that. But if you stay in the race, it is not useful to the objective to tear down Crow. Crow's clearly the favorite. That doesn't mean you win. It just means he's the favorite.
I hear you.
That doesn't mean it's right. It just means
No, I hear you.
Right. I don't know Crow well, but I think he's a decent human being.
So before we go any further on that, Crow is the favorite. In no small part, Congressman Hoyer, because the DCCC not only put its finger on the scale, but started jumping on the scale very early on. And I'm born and raised a Democrat. I mean, it's undemocratic to have a small elite select someone and then try to rig the primary against the other people running. And that is basically what's been happening.
I hear you, and I disagree.
I hear you. I just disagree that it's undemocratic to have a small elite rig the primary. But that's neither here nor there. So I just played that so you kind of have an idea who you're dealing with here. But riddle me this, okay? Again, we are in this moment, August 6th, a week after unemployment, the $600 unemployment extension, gone. Eviction moratorium, gone. Most states, you could be evicted now, okay? So we're here because the Republicans got exactly what they wanted 4 or 5 months ago when the Democrats had maximum leverage. So now that the Democrats have a little leverage left, they had no leverage after they gave away the farm in the beginning, $4 to $6 trillion to corporate America. Now they have a little leverage because Trump is desperate to get something done. He's just hemorrhaging in most polls. If the election were held today, Trump would lose by a lot, it seems, according to the polls. So Democrats have maximum leverage, or I wouldn't say maximum, but a good amount of leverage. And you have Pelosi saying, well, maybe employers could pay their workers more money. Just maybe. We don't have any control over that. You know, controlling the House of Representatives here. Steny Hoyer goes on, well, of course, we're not going to get to we're definitely not going to get to 3.4 trillion. Why can't you get the 3.4 trillion? Why can't you get more than the 3.4 trillion? Why aren't you demanding not only the $600 expansion, the $600 unemployment to continue, but add something else onto that? We don't know when this is going to end. We don't know if a lot of these jobs will be permanently gone, because a lot of these businesses might be permanently gone. Why don't you add something in terms of health care? Call it whatever you want. If you don't want to call it Medicare for all, fine. But you're not proposing anything in terms of health care and not demanding the Republicans do anything on health care. Right now, you actually could be the hostage takers if you were the Democrats. If you actually knew how to do politics. Trump, desperate. He's talking about doing executive actions on these things. McConnell doesn't want to lose the Senate. Why aren't you going in front of cameras and saying, no, the American people are desperate. This is not the time for compromise because we are dealing with a pandemic. We cannot compromise on the American people keeping a roof over their head. We cannot compromise on families being able to feed their children. We cannot compromise on people being able to have health care without the worry of cost during a deadly pandemic that we don't know when it will end or how it will evolve. Now is the time not to sit here and say, oh, this is Washington and we have to compromise, but to start hostage taking. You have the leverage because Trump is going to lose. You have the leverage because the Republican Senate might go down with him. But you're going on TV saying, well, of course, we're not going to get to 3.4 trillion. If it were me, I'd say to hell with it. I'm not meeting with them. There's nothing to meet about. We've fallen off the cliff. They have thrown the American people off the cliff. They, the Republicans, they're talking about a $300. Now they're moving up to $300 a week. Put it on the Republicans. Yet, they basically, again, as Bernie used to say, starting by offering half a loaf. $600 a week, honestly, is great. But what the Democrats should say is we cannot continue with piecemeal. We're going to extend it for 4 months, 5 months. We need to pass a law, universal basic income, until doctors, medical professionals like Dr. Fauci say it is safe for children to go to school. It is safe for all workers to go back to work. It is safe for people to congregate. And that might not be for another year. Let's be real. So we need structural safeguards in that are not going to run out in 3-4 months. They always say businesses need certainty. That's a bunch of bullshit. But anyway, people need certainty. Parents need certainty. Okay? Single mothers need certainty. Working people need certainty. Black and brown people that have been disproportionately affected by this, both economically and with health outcomes, they need certainty. And don't get it twisted. The Republicans, I mean, the buck stops with the president. The Republicans have the Senate. So it's not just Pelosi's fault. It's not just Schumer's fault. But the bottom line is, don't tell me after you drove the getaway car of the original terrible bill, you've all seen it. Don't tell me after you assisted the bank robbery and then turn around and pretend I wasn't there. What are you talking about? I wasn't driving the car. I wasn't even in the state. Hell yeah, Pelosi, Schumer helped loot the Treasury of $4 to $6 trillion. And now they're basically saying, well, we're here to compromise and, the Republicans are awful, but we need to do something for the American people. I was saying a month before the expiration of the unemployment, of the moratorium, why weren't they in front of cameras then? A month before this. And by the way, Friday is the last day before they take recess. Congress goes on recess for the rest of August. It's quite the racket. If you could get in as a congressperson, you get to screw the American people. You get to operate in a system of legalized bribery where you sell your representation for the highest bidder, meaning to the donors. And then you get to go on vacation all the time. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.